Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. The transfer alert flashed, so I snatched his phone fast. I'm Mara, 34, and I know that sound by heart. Daniel lunged for the screen, fingers tight on my wrist. I twisted free, thumbed the notification open, and froze. A 4-figure payment blinked to a woman named Elena again. Give it back, his voice came low and controlled. Why is she getting monthly money? I asked without blinking. He stared at the table like it might answer. She used to help us with Theo, he muttered, barely audible. The word used hung there like a loose step. I opened the banking app and tapped into history. Rows of transfers lined up like marching orders. Rent, insurance, car note, additional fees. I scrolled until my thumb ached, then looked up. You're running her life from our account, why? He reached, then stopped when I pulled the device closer. That sounds worse than it is, his jaw tightened. What is it then? Charity, guilt, leverage. He glanced at the door like he might bolt. We owe her, he whispered and flinched. We owe her nothing I didn't sign for. My voice held even as my chest climbed. You called her our nanny, so tell me details. He rubbed his temple, buying time with silence. She was around before, she helped a lot. Before what? Marriage, Theo, or the truth? Heat rose, not dramatic, just focused and steady. This is not support, this is a second household. He stepped back, palms open like I had a weapon. You're jumping to conclusions you'll regret. I took a photo from the fridge and slid it over. Theo missing a tooth, gap-toothed and fierce and beaming. If she raised him, she knows this day. Daniel blinked twice, then stared at the countertop. You're spiraling, he said, voice thinner than before. I'm not spiraling, I'm counting. My finger tapped dates. Same day each month, same amounts, same neat descriptions. There was even a tuition line that didn't match us. How many secrets cost tuition in this city? He swallowed hard and the room went smaller. Stop, he pinched the bridge of his nose and exhaled. She did things for me you don't understand. I understand numbers, I understand patterns, I understand lies. I slid the phone into my pocket and stood. Either you explain or I'll ask her myself. He blocked the hallway, breath steady but eyes wild. She's dramatic, she'll twist everything, you'll get hurt. Then I'll be careful, I said, chest hammering anyway. I took my keys and he didn't follow. Fear walked beside me but curiosity walked faster. In the car, I typed her number from the transfer notes. A short text, crisp and neutral and sharp. Hi Elena, I need to meet today. 3 dots pulsed, then vanished, then returned, then stuck. 4 o'clock, cafe on Ian Campanino, come alone. I stared at the reply until my vision steadied. If she knew Theo, she would mention him first. She didn't, she named a place and set terms. That choice told me more than any backstory tonight. I started the engine and felt the ground tilt. On the porch, Daniel waited with his gym bag ready. Cancel it, he said, voice flat as cold steel. Not a chance, I answered, hand on the lock. He held my gaze and tried one more bluff. She's not who you think, neither am I. I opened the door and let the night spill in. The air carried rain, fast and stubborn and loud. Storms complicate traffic and choices and reveal leaks. I texted a friend to pick up Theo early. This meeting would not end at coffee. I parked 2 blocks away and killed the engine. My phone buzzed with a new message from Daniel. Turn around, this will explode, short, contained, urgent. I slid the phone face down and stepped into rain. I had already chosen the blast. The cafe door pushed back against my shoulder. A barista glanced up, then returned to a stack. Elena waved from a corner table like we were friends. I walked over and kept my bag on my lap. I chose the seat with the exit behind me. You came alone, her eyebrows lifted, almost amused. I asked for it, I answered and watched her hands. No ring, no tremor, no visible tells. Let's keep this efficient, I said and placed the phone. Her gaze flicked to it like a magnet. I want clarity, not drama, she folded her arms. Great, me too, I leaned in and lowered my voice. How long did you watch my kid after school? She didn't blink, she took a slow sip. You'll need to ask Daniel about logistics. That is me asking, I kept my tone even. What time did you collect him on Wednesdays? She adjusted her cuff and smiled a practiced smile. Whatever time was set, she said and checked the door. So no time at all. What's his teacher's name this term? My finger tapped. Another pause, tiny and loaded and quiet. I didn't handle classroom stuff, she replied, still smiling. Then you handled nights when he ran a fever. Her lashes fluttered once like a misstep. Look, she placed a napkin bet. Wean us like neutral ground. I'm not here to compare notes about a child. I'm here because your husband cannot keep boundaries. She tilted her head, gauging my reaction without blinking. Does that surprise you? Boundaries are easy when nothing is hidden. I turned the screen so she could see payments. Rent car, insurance, tuition, all in your orbit. Why are you fully financed out of my account? Her jaw flexed, then settled like a choice landed. He promised discretion, her voice went thin at the edges. You're blowing through agreements that kept things stable. I kept still, forcing the silence to work. What agreements exactly? I asked, careful with each word. She traced the napkin's edge and didn't answer. You worked in my home, I said and watched her face. No, she replied, quick and clean and final. That single word sliced through my last excuse. So I followed with a sharper one. Then what are we paying for? She leaned back and studied me like a problem. You came for truth, but you want me to bleed. I came for truth and I can handle cuts. Another glance at the door, then at my hands. You won't like the full picture. Try me, the words came colder than I expected. She nodded once, then drew a breath and waited. Your kid is not part of this. That is already clear, I answered and held her eyes. She looked almost relieved. Then my next question is simple, I kept my voice low. Are you moving because of us? That landed, she reached for her phone without unlocking it. Relocation was recommended, she said and tapped the case. Too much attention, too many near misses. Near misses with what? I felt my stomach brace. Curious neighbors, unplanned meetings, crossed bills. That tuition line does not belong to me, I said. She pressed her lips together and checked the time. Stop chasing tuition, focus on paternity. The word hit like a fist to the ribs. I heard the rush of milk steaming, I heard cars. Everything narrowed to her mouth, forming syllables slowly. Paternity belongs to him, she added almost gently. My hand tightened around the chair. Whose? The word scraped out, more gravel than voice. She opened her mouth, then closed it as footsteps approached. An older man placed 2 waters and drifted off. Elena lifted her glass without drinking a drop. She set it down and met my stare. I will not name a child in public, she said. Bring him to a clinic if you want proof. You know which clinic? I asked, pulse ricocheting hard. She pulled a folded card from her wallet and paused. If I give this, you will burn your marriage. I held out my palm and waited without blinking. She placed the card and reclaimed her hand slowly. Appointments under my family name, the letters gleamed briefly. Ask for records linked to Daniel, they will cooperate. Because he signed something, I asked, already knowing. Because he's in the system, she answered, voice like stone. A message lit my phone with his name and 3 words. Do not trust her, the timing almost made me laugh. I locked the screen and slipped the card into my bag. Elena watched that small move like a verdict. I wanted calm, he wanted silence, you want impact. Her gaze softened, and for a heartbeat I saw fatigue. Don't punish a kid for adult choices, she said. I'm not aiming at kids, I answered and stood. I'm aiming at lies that keep multiplying. She leaned forward with one more boundary drawn crisp. Call me before you confront him with this. Why? I zipped my bag and took a step back. Because he panics when cornered, and panic breeds violence. The word violence froze the air between us. I nodded once and turned toward the exit quickly. Rain hammered the street and washed away debate. My phone vibrated again with his name, then again. I pushed the door and stepped into the storm. The card in my pocket felt radioactive. I called the number on the card before the engine warmed. Earliest slot today, I said, voice steady enough to pass. We can do 5, the receptionist replied without hesitation. I confirmed, then drove toward the address like a countdown. Every light turned red at the worst moment. At the intersection, my phone lit up again. 3 messages stacked from Daniel like falling bricks. Come home now, then we can talk, then nothing. I muted notifications and kept my hands locked forward. He would try a different tactic next. I reached the clinic and walked straight to the desk. I need records linked to this name, I said. I slid the card across and kept my face blank. The receptionist's eyes moved between screen and card. Do you have authorization? She asked with practiced calm. I have reason, I answered and let the silence linger. She held it longer, then offered a workaround very carefully. You can request a balance check if you cover bills. That I can do, I said and placed my card. G-type. Ed then frowned like numbers had opinions. There is an outstanding pediatric charge under that profile. The word stacked in my ears with unbearable precision. Immunizations and routine care, she continued with clinical rhythm. The responsible party listed as Daniel Ionescu. My pulse skipped, then restarted in a new gear. Is there an appointment today? I asked without breathing. She checked, then nodded once like a metronome. 4:45, she said and glanced toward the hallway. Please take a seat if you are waiting. Waiting tasted like metal on my tongue. I stepped away and called Alina with my back turned. It's on the books, I said, keeping my voice even. Then stop guessing and let the facts speak, she replied. Come at 4:45 and observe quietly. Quiet isn't my strength today, I muttered, then agreed. The lobby door opened and I froze from pure instinct. Daniel walked in with a hood up and eyes scanning. He spotted me and halted like he hit a wall. We are leaving, he said, jaw wired tight. I stayed put, feet planted like anchors. Move, he repeated, dropping his voice to a warning growl. Or what? I asked, matching his stare without blinking. You don't want to find out, he said, stepping closer. A security guard shifted near the water cooler and watched. The room shrank by 2 sizes in 1 beat. Stop making a scene, I said, hands open and steady. Then stop digging, he answered, breath hot with panic. We can fix this at home if you just listen. Fix what exactly? I asked, letting each word hit. He flinched like I had thrown something hard. Alina walked in with a toddler on her hip. The child laughed once, then tucked into her shoulder. Daniel's mouth opened, then snapped shut like a trap. I looked at the boy and saw a familiar tilt. My knees wanted to quit, but I didn't move. Do not involve her, Alina said, eyes razor sharp. She is already involved, I answered without looking away. Then keep voices down, the guard cut in from the side. Alina shifted the child to the other arm. A tiny sneaker kicked Daniel's thigh. Back office now, the receptionist called to Alina. She nodded and started toward the hall at a clip. Daniel reached out and caught her elbow too hard. Let go, she warned, low and controlled like a switch. I stepped between them before it ignited. Touch her again and I call the police. My tone surprised us all, including me. He dropped his hand and took a step back. Fine, he muttered, eyes darting everywhere but mine. He was calculating exits and I saw every one. Alina vanished down the corridor with the kid. The door swung once and closed with a tight latch. Daniel leaned close enough for me to count breaths. You're going to destroy everything, he whispered like a curse. Everything was already cracked, I whispered back. The receptionist called my last name to the counter. There is a consent form you can view as a payer. She pushed a tablet across and tilted it toward me. One field stood out in crisp letters that hit hard. Father of record Daniel Ionescu. I signed the balance and handed back the pen. Behind the door a child cried, quick then quiet. Daniel stared at the floor like answers lived there. He looks like you, slipped out before I could stop it. He didn't deny it and that silence said enough. The hallway door opened and a nurse stepped through. Only one adult with the patient, she announced to the room. Alina looked to me and then to Daniel. Her eyelids flickered once like a code only adults share. Pick, she said and waited for our choice. Daniel lifted a hand, then dropped it midair. I stood still and let the moment stretch thin. Alina took the boy and angled toward the back. Call me after, she murmured with a stare like warning. Then the door closed and left us together. I'm not running, I told him, voice calm but sharpened. I'm not covering either, I added and watched his jaw. He rubbed his face and started to pace tight circles. We need rules for this, he said to the floor. He was negotiating with a grenade. Here is a rule, I said, keeping my volume low. No more secret payments and no more half answers. You come home after this and tell the truth. If you stall, I call an attorney tonight. His eyes flashed and then flattened into something ugly. Don't do that, he warned, body leaning closer again. You think you know what you're doing, but you don't. He pressed 2 fingers to his temple like it hurt. Across the room, the guard shifted again with purpose. One more step from Daniel and I would make noise. The nurse reappeared with a clipboard and pointed at me. Signature for the settled account, she stated without warmth. I signed again and felt my hands stop shaking. Results will be ready in 10, she added and vanished. 10 minutes can upend a life, and we both knew it. Daniel sank into a chair and finally looked at me. We can go somewhere neutral after this, he offered quietly. No more neutral, I answered, and the words landed heavy. Home documents, names, dates, line by line. He nodded once like a man signing surrender. The back door opened and Elena returned with the child. His cheeks were damp, but he clutched a small sticker. She paused 3 steps away and met my eyes square. We're done here for today, she said, crisp and final. Next is paperwork and you'll want copies. I held out my phone and snapped the consent page. Elena angled the clipboard so the header stayed visible. Daniel inhaled like he might argue again, then stopped. The nurse glanced at us once and reached for a stamp. Ink hit paper with a heavy final sound. Copies now, I kept my voice level and direct. The receptionist nodded and disappeared behind a partition. Daniel rubbed his wrist and watched the hallway door. Elena bounced the boy on her hip to calm him. He reached toward Daniel and then buried his face. The printer churned and the receptionist returned with packets. Balance cleared, contact updated, release noted. I took the stack and slid one set to Elena. She tucked it into her bag with quick hands. My fingers shook once and then steadied. Daniel leaned close enough for me to feel heat. Let's go somewhere private, he whispered near my ear. Not yet, I stepped back and kept eye contact. We finish administrative steps here, then we move. He clenched his jaw and stared at the floor. Clinic note shows father acknowledged, I said to both. Elena nodded once, small and controlled and tired. No more monthly secrecy after today, I added. We set a schedule through an account with oversight. Daniel's mouth tightened like a locked door. Elena watched him for a beat, then looked at me. Get a third-party manager, she said with quiet urgency. He backtracks when cornered in private. The security guard drifted a step closer to us. Daniel's shoulders rose like he wanted to grow taller. The nurse reappeared with a new form on a board. Immunization record release for school, she said to Elena. She signed and handed the pen back without a tremor. The boy reached for the sticker basket and missed. His small whimper cut straight through the room. Daniel bent and offered his hand to the kid. Little fingers grabbed his thumb and calmed instantly. Elena watched that grip and blinked hard once. It was the quietest proof in the building. I swallowed and reset my posture. 5 minutes in the consultation room, the nurse announced. Only caregivers and designated payer inside. Elena looked at me like a question mark, waiting. Go, I said and pointed Daniel toward the door. He hesitated, then followed her inside. I stayed with the guard and the receptionist near the desk. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Family Services Coordinator available tomorrow, the text read. It included a brief link and a callback code. Someone had moved ahead of me. Elena stepped back out without the child for a moment. She held out a folded document and tapped the corner. Old non-disclosure, he pushed this after the birth. It is void if coercive payments continue, she added. Daniel reappeared behind her and froze. I unfolded the page and skimmed the signature line. The date landed like a punch under the ribs. It overlapped with our anniversary month and a business trip. I looked up and kept my face blank and unreadable. Daniel watched my eyes like a hunted animal. Where did you get that? He asked, voice flat. Elena lifted her chin and kept her reply measured. You delivered it to my door with a courier. You remember your own pen, she added, almost bored. A vein flickered at his temple. I pulled out my wallet and removed a small card. Coordinator tomorrow, neutral office, recording aloud. Daniel shifted his weight and glanced at the exit. Attendance mandatory if you want terms, I said. He nodded once like a man at a cliff. The consultation door opened, and the nurse waved Elena in. Daniel reached for the boy again and stopped midway. He looked at me like permission mattered for once. Go, I said and breathed through the sting. He vanished into the room with the family he hid. I sat on a bench and opened the packet slowly. Line items listed appointments, labs, and routine care. The father field repeated his full name in clear text. A separate sheet showed automatic reminders to 2 numbers. I recognized one and memorized the other. The door opened again with a soft hiss. Elena emerged carrying a small calendar printout. She handed it to me and did not smile. Next appointment scheduled, you can come or not. I will attend, I answered without hesitation. Daniel lingered inside like a man delaying gravity. When he finally stepped out, he wouldn't meet my eyes. Car, he murmured and gestured toward the exit. I stood and held the papers tight. Enough to crease them. Elena squeezed my elbow as I passed. Outside, traffic roared and soaked the sidewalk fast. I unlocked the car and slid into the driver's seat. Daniel climbed in and shut the door with a thud. He rested his forehead on his hands and breathed. I watched his shoulders rise and fall like warning buoys. No yelling, I said, keeping tone low and even. We handle logistics before emotions, understand. He stared ahead and finally nodded once. Payment stopped today unless routed through oversight. Fine, he muttered, barely audible. Access plan for the boy goes through written channels. No surprise visits, no last-minute changes, no cash. I waited for pushback and got only silence. Disclosure to our household starts tonight under oath. He turned his head and looked almost relieved. My phone vibrated again with the coordinator's confirmation. I forwarded the details to both of them immediately. Elena replied with a single thumbs-up icon and nothing else. Daniel typed erased, then wrote one word. Okay. I pulled out of the spot and drove home in a haze. Every red light felt like a test I had to pass. He kept his hand still and watched my profile. I thought I could juggle this forever, he said. The word forever scraped wrong against the windshield. At home, I placed the packets on the table. Sit, I said, and opened my laptop with brisk movements. Bring your banking login and your calendar, I added. He obeyed without argument, and that scared me more. Compliance can hide planning. I exported statements covering the last 12 months. Transfers to the same destination repeated with precision. Notes matched rent cycles and auto deductions exactly. I highlighted them and created a neat ledger. Columns make patterns hard to deny. Here is tomorrow's agenda, I said, tapping the screen. Coordinator at 9, lawyer at 11, a notary after lunch. You will sign to formalize child support and communication. You will also disclose any other obligations now. He swallowed like glass and stared at his hands. There isn't another one, he muttered without looking up. I held his gaze until he raised his head. Make sure I will verify every line you speak. He nodded once and shut his eyes briefly. Truth looked heavier than I expected. My phone lit up with an unknown video call. Elena's face filled the screen with a quiet room behind her. I want the boys' week stable, she began, voice taut. Pick 2 evenings with notice and stick to them. Daniel listened and then rubbed his jaw. Tuesday and Thursday, he offered after a beat. 6 to 8, she countered with a sharp nod. 6 to 8 works, I confirmed before he could drift. We will accompany the first week, then review. No one smiled and that felt right. Last item, Elena added while checking something off-screen. Stop contacting me outside logistics or I block you. Daniel glanced at me and deflated a little. Use the coordinator email for every request, I said. He agreed with a flat, simple yes. We ended the call and sat in a dense quiet. From the hallway, I heard the washing machine finish. Ordinary life kept moving while ours rearranged itself violently. Daniel stood, then sank back into the chair. He looked like a man after a wreck. You can still fix parts of this, I offered carefully. Not reputation, not trust, but structure, safety, clarity. He nodded with a slow, exhausted motion that worried me. I'll be there tomorrow, I'll sign everything. I believed him and didn't trust him. I gathered the documents into a single folder. A bright sticky tab marked the father acknowledgement page. Another tab flagged the old non-disclosure for counsel. I placed the bundle by the door like a packed bag. We were already halfway out of our old life. My screen pinged with a calendar invite from the coordinator. Title read Interim Parenting and Support Plan. I accepted and sent an invitation to Daniel and Elena. 2 green checks appeared and steadied my breathing. Small confirmations can carry heavy weight. Sleep on the couch tonight, I said without heat. I need space to think without alarms. He opened his mouth and then closed it again. He grabbed a blanket from the hall and didn't argue. It felt like the first safe step in days. I locked the front door and checked the chain twice. I set my phone to loud and placed it on the nightstand. Then I stood in the doorway and watched him settle. His eyes were open in the dark like 2 warnings. Morning would demand signatures and the truth he kept dodging. I lay down and stared at the ceiling like a scoreboard. Names, times, totals, and the new schedule marched through me. The boy's small hand around his thumb would not leave. That image hurt and clarified in the same breath. Tomorrow I would choose resolve over comfort. Before sleep, I opened a blank note titled Rules. I typed each boundary as if it we. Law. No hidden accounts, no off-book gifts, no broken pickups. All communication copied to me until trust earns daylight. I hit save and felt the ground stop shifting. A final message arrived just past midnight from Elena. Thank you for staying calm when he surged. I stared at the words until they steadied my chest. Then I replied with the only line that fit. Calm is over, structure starts now. I arrived early and set the folder on the table. The coordinator walked in with a recorder and a checklist. Daniel slipped through the door 2 minutes late, eyes guarded. Elena took a chair across from him and unfolded a pen. The room felt wired for truth or a fire. Ground rules, the coordinator clicked the recorder and nodded once. Speak in turns, keep voices steady, no interruptions. I lifted my hand, we need a verified plan today. Elena placed a printed calendar between us like a truce. Daniel stared at it as if it might explode. Parenting time proposal, the coordinator read, tapping the page. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, 2 hours with punctual exchanges. Financial support processed through agency, not directly. I nodded once and slid over the ledger. Line items glared like neon warnings. Daniel leaned back and laced his fingers together. I can manage support within reason, he muttered without emphasis. Elena's eyebrow rose, within reason is not a number. The coordinator circled a figure and pushed a form forward. Temporary amount based on regional guidelines, she said calmly. He glanced at me like he wanted rescue and permission. He got neither. I kept my gaze neutral and firm. Elena watched him sign and did not blink once. The pen scratched across the page with reluctant strokes. A copy landed in my folder like a blade. Communication channel, the coordinator continued without pause. All logistics through the monitored email and portal. No texting outside emergencies, she added, eyes settling on Daniel. He nodded and stared at the edge of the table. The recorder's red dot stared back without mercy. Next exchanges, I lifted the calendar and pointed. Neutral site only, no show-ups at homes. Elena agreed with a clipped motion and checked a box. Daniel cleared his throat, then thought better of it. The coordinator wrote community center and underlined twice. Verification of identity for pickups, the coordinator said briskly. Bring ID at each visit until consistent compliance. Elena slid a photo of the boy across the table. Use this for the center file, she said evenly. Daniel's fingers twitched, then went still like a held breath. A staffer stepped in and dropped a sealed envelope. The coordinator scanned the contents and looked up slowly. We have confirmation of additional transfers last night, she said. My stomach dropped. I had locked accounts before sleep. Daniel shifted, then stilled under the fluorescent quiet. I opened my banking app under the table quickly. A new debit sat there marked as a subscription. The merchant name hid behind a bland label, suspiciously tidy. I tilted the screen toward the coordinator and the room. Her mouth flattened into a thin, professional line. Explain it, I asked, keeping tone even and controlled. Daniel's jaw moved, then he exhaled through his nose. That is my storage service, he replied, eyes on nothing. Elena's gaze sharpened. Storage for what? He brushed lint from his sleeve and said nothing. The coordinator folded her hands like a judge between verdicts. Transparency is non-negotiable under this plan, she said evenly. If storage contains case-relevant records, disclose access. Daniel's stare found the wall clock and clung hard. He nodded with the resignation of someone cornered. He typed on his phone and pushed it across. A login screen waited, sterile and quiet and locked. Password, I said, not loud, not gentle. He entered it while watching my face for movement. Folders populated in a cold, methodical grid. I scrolled without commentary and clicked the newest folder. A set of documents loaded with timestamp labels. There were scanned contracts, rental agreements, and a wire template. A second folder held screenshots of our mortgage app. Elena leaned forward, eyes narrow and alert. I opened a file labeled Bridge Plan. The first line mentioned refinancing our home behind my back. The second line listed a private lender with predatory terms. My vision steadied because the rage kept me upright. Were you planning to sign this today? He rubbed his eyebrow and locked his jaw again. I panicked about penalties and tried to protect assets. By risking the house, I asked, each word a strike. Elena closed her eyes for one measured beat. The coordinator wrote financial endangerment on her pad. We're adding an immediate freeze on major transactions, she said. Also, third-party oversight for household accounts. Agency will notify parties if violations occur. I nodded, grateful for structure even as anger burned. Daniel stared at the recorder like it had teeth. Now disclosures, the coordinator continued, tone precise and sharp. Any other dependents, arrangements, or side agreements? Her pen hovered, waiting for the lie or the truth. Daniel swallowed and glanced at Elena with a familiar flinch. She didn't rescue him, and I didn't either. No more dependents, he finally said, clipped and flat. Only the one involved here, he dropped his eyes. The room listened, and I listened harder. The coordinator wrote, declares single minor child, and underlined twice. You will sign that under penalty, she added. We moved to the timeline of visits and payments. Elena chose Tuesdays and Thursdays with precise hand movements. I set reminder alarms and copied the portal address. Daniel checked his watch as if time owed him favors. The coordinator tapped the recorder and reset the tone. Safety note, she said, voice firm and careful. Escalations or threats trigger an automatic suspension. Any physical intimidation results in police called immediately. Daniel exhaled through his teeth and looked away. Elena nodded with eyes steady and unblinking. One more procedural item, the coordinator added, softer now. Child's surname remains unchanged without court approval. Daniel flinched in a quick, guilty motion he couldn't hide. Elena saw it and said nothing, which said everything. I added it to my growing list. We signed a stack in silent, efficient order. Each sheet got initials, date, and clean signatures. The coordinator arranged them and slid out copies. Her last move placed a safety plan on top. I took it like a shield I intended to use. When the recorder clicked off, the room exhaled together. Daniel looked at me with a tired, pleading expression. Coffee, 5 minutes lobby, he stood without waiting. I looked at Elena, who shrugged once like dice. Take the guard with you, she murmured. In the lobby, he hovered near the exit and pretended calm. I didn't know how to end it without breaking us. You ended it by hiding it, I answered, pulse steady. His hands opened, then closed around nothing at all. He tried to smile and abandoned it halfway. Give me a path and I'll walk it, he said. There is a path, you just signed it. We live by it or we separate. He absorbed that like a bruise you cannot hide. "I'll follow it," he whispered, and I believed him halfway. We stepped outside and rain hit our shoulders hard. He offered the umbrella, then thought better of it. "I'll call the lender and cancel everything." I watched his screen while he dialed and waited. The call connected and he faltered. "Speaker," I instructed, and he complied without a fight. A bored voice asked for the application number. He read it and requested withdrawal immediately. The lender warned of fees and future ineligibility. He accepted both like penalties he finally deserved. We walked back in and found Alina near the desk. She held a stamped packet addressed to both parties. "School requires updated contact information," she said briskly. I listed the coordinator portal as primary. Good, no more back channels meant fewer fires. "Next stop attorney," I told Daniel without soft edges. He nodded, pocketed his phone, and faced the door. Alina reached out. "I didn't touch my sleeve once." "I will be at the center at 6, she said. "Do not let him arrive early." At the lawyer's office, the intake was fast and clinical. I passed the folder and the non-disclosure across the desk. Our counsel read and asked 3 precise questions. Any threats recorded, any property moves, any harassment. I answered each and watched Daniel hold very still. The attorney drafted a temporary agreement with razor clarity. No refinancing without my written consent. No contact outside the portal. Immediate disclosure of all accounts with balances and cards. Daniel signed while a notary stamped in quick bursts. "Enforcement sits with the court if violated," the lawyer said. "File now or hold pending compliance." I looked at Daniel and saw that half surrender again. "Hold for 48 hours, I decided, voice like granite. "Then we file if anything drifts." We left and walked to the car in near silence. My phone buzzed with an alert from the portal. "Pickup confirmation for tonight, center entry logged." Good, the system was already working as designed. Daniel watched the screen like it judged him. At home, I gathered the household cards into a tray. He sat across and unlocked his banking apps one by one. I wrote down each account and every automatic payment. A savings fund popped up that I had never seen. He went pale and I understood why. I opened the fund and scrolled through contributions. Monthly deposits matched the missing cash on my spreadsheet. The account beneficiary listed a name I recognized. Not the boy, someone older, someone silent in our house. I looked up and waited for air. "My brother," he murmured, barely above a breath. He lost his job and needed bridge money. I studied the totals and the dates and the transfers. They overlapped perfectly with the worst months. "You didn't ask, you just took." I thought I could fix it before you noticed. The phrase fractured something old in me. "Restore the money within 30 days, I said. "If you cannot, disclose exact plan tomorrow morning." He nodded as if his neck hurt. The doorbell rang at 4 with no warning. Alina stood on the step with a small backpack. "Drop off before the center so there are no surprises." She handed over the pack and checked her watch. Daniel hovered in the hallway like a shadow. "Your car or mine?" I asked without turning. "Mine," he answered quickly, keys already in hand. I met Alina's eyes and she gave a tiny nod. "Text me upon arrival," she said, voice clipped. "I will be 10 minutes behind." They left while I sent screenshots to the portal. Arrival time, location, the supervisor's name and badge. The system responded with a green check immediately. I breathed out and felt my shoulders finally drop. Small systems, big anchors. At 5:58, I watched the live attendance board. Participant checked in at the front desk. Another ping confirmed the child's entry with a staff escort. I sent a thumbs up to Alina and closed the app. It buzzed again before I could pocket it. A message from the center flashed across the screen. Attempted unscheduled contact by third-party mail. Turned away, situation resolved, parties notified. I called immediately, heart kicking hard against bone. "Who tried to enter?" "Older gentleman claiming to be grandfather," the staffer replied. "No authorization on file, he was asked to leave." I pictured Daniel's father and the way he dismisses rules. I dialed Daniel as the center logged the incident. He answered on the second ring with a clenched breath. My father showed up, he said, voice rasped and tight. I didn't call him, he tracked me through maps. Disable sharing now, I snapped, and he obeyed. Elena arrived at the same moment and called me. I see him outside, he is arguing with staff. Stay in your car, I told her, eyes on the feed. I am calling the coordinator hotline for backup. I tapped the number and reported the breach calmly. A supervisor promised to dispatch security immediately. I kept both calls open like lifelines. Minutes stretched and then snapped as messages rolled in. Third party escorted off property, no police required. Child remains with staff, exchange proceeding on schedule. I thanked the center and texted Elena the all clear. Daniel's breathing normalized on the line. When the visit ended, the board showed pickup completed. Elena confirmed the handoff with a short message. On my way home, everything calm. Relief loosened the band around my ribs. Then my phone chimed again and wiped it away. A bank alert flagged an attempted password reset. Not mine, not Daniel's, the savings fund with his brother. I turned the screen toward him across the kitchen. Are you touching this now? He shook his head and grabbed his phone. Someone else has credentials, he said, scanning furiously. Elena texted 3 words that lined up with the alert. Brother. Called me, then asked if we were splitting. Wants to help you refinance privately. I stared at the wall and chose my next move. I dialed the fund's hotline and went straight to security. Freeze all access and require in-person verification. The agent asked for my authority and the account owner. I handed the phone to Daniel without softening my eyes. He gave permission and added me as a controller. The freeze confirmation arrived with a reference number. I copied it to the attorney and the coordinator instantly. Elena replied with a simple thank you at the same time. Daniel sank into a chair and rubbed his forehead. Enough fires for one evening, and yet. The door opened and our child ran down the hall. His laugh hit me like water after a marathon. He launched into my arms and anchored my body. He peered over my shoulder toward Daniel and squinted. Why is Daddy dressed nice? I held him and kept my tone easy and warm. Daddy had an appointment and followed the rules. He nodded like that was a story with a hero. Daniel swallowed and reached for a hug. I watched for flinches and saw none. Bedtime ran on rails because I forced it to. Brush, read, pillow, a kiss on the forehead. Door closed with a gentle click that steadied me. I leaned on the frame and let silence soak in. Then I walked back to the table and reset. Tomorrow, I told Daniel, voice clear and final. You email your father and revoke any involvement. You meet the coordinator for a compliance briefing. You wire the first support payment through the agency. And you send me every receipt before noon. He nodded and didn't try to negotiate his dignity. The lesson was finally reaching bone and nerve. He stood and gathered his jacket from the chair. Couch again, he asked, almost as a statement. Yes, I answered and turned off the kitchen light. In bed, I reviewed the digital trail until midnight. Every alert forward, every screenshot archived, every signature logged. I backed up the storage folder and locked the drive. A second backup went to my attorney's portal. Insurance against the next creative disaster. Right before sleep, my phone buzzed one last time. Elena again, brief and clipped like a surgeon. He asked for Tuesday ice cream after the center. Is that within the plan? I scrolled and checked, then typed. Approved if it stays within the 2 hours. Send a picture to the portal when seated. A minute later, an image arrived with 2 cones. No faces, just proof of normal minutes happening. It landed like a promise I was scared to trust. I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. We had a framework teeth and a clock running. He had run out of shadows, at least for now. Tomorrow might bring another door kicked open. I fell asleep already walking toward it. I woke to the buzz of a new notification and moved. The agency receipt hit first, payment 1 cleared and logged. A second ping followed with a meeting link for court filing. Then a text from an unknown number slid across the screen. Call me, I can make this disappear. I dialed anyway and put it on speaker. A man breathed once and introduced himself as Daniel's brother. Withdraw the freeze and I'll cover the arrears today. Stop calling me, I answered, voice steady like a blade. Put your offer in writing to counsel or stop. Footsteps creaked in the hall and the couch rustled. Daniel stood in the doorway with a look I didn't recognize. Not swagger, not apology, a dull, focused resolve. I'm going to talk to our son after school. You're not doing that alone, I replied, and he knew. By 8, I was in the coordinator's office again. She placed a digital recorder between us like an umpire. Court is ready for an emergency consent order, she said. Add language on third parties attempting interference, I responded. We already have an incident to cite. Elena arrived with a binder and a clenched jaw. We received 2 calls overnight from the same number. She slid a log of incoming attempts under the recorder. Both offered cash for flexibility, she added, eyes hard. Neither understood how this works. Documented, the coordinator said, pen moving quick and clean. We escalate contact restrictions if it repeats within 30 days. I signed my portion and copied her template to my drive. Elena initialed every page with identical, precise signatures. Daniel's slot remained open, waiting like a test. He walked in at 8:59 and didn't look around. No smile, no pleading, he took the chair and exhaled. I rescinded my father's access, he stated without prompting. Location sharing disabled across family accounts. Goods, the coordinator replied and hit record. Purpose of this meeting, she said with methodical cadence. Confirm compliance, finalize disclosures, schedule disclosure to the child. She tilted the form toward him and tapped a line. Anything else we need, T? Oh no, before filing. He stared at that line like it burned. There is one more account, he admitted after 3 beats. A digital wallet under a work alias from a contract. I didn't blink, I slid the pad toward his hands. He wrote the provider, the address, and the amount. He added the secret phrase and pushed it back. The coordinator called the firm's compliance officer on speaker. We need employer acknowledgement he cannot use ghost payouts. A clipped voice confirmed receipt and promised an audit. Elena's gaze flicked between us like she was tracking spark lines. Lock it all down, she murmured, and I agreed. At 9:20, the judge's assistant opened the video room. We stated names and confirmed identity and location. The coordinator summarized the plan and the violations. I added the attempted intrusion and the new discovery. The assistant typed in bursts and asked tight questions. Any physical threats came through the speaker with a click. No threats, only boundary tests and financial maneuvers. Any concerns for immediate safety of the child? None with current supervision, Elena answered before I could. The call ended with a slot on tomorrow's docket. When the screen went black, the coordinator leaned forward. Next step is disclosure to your child with coaching. Daniel flinched at the word and straightened his back. My turn to talk without hiding, he whispered to the table. We do it together, I said, and he nodded. Elena gathered her binder and adjusted the strap. I will be at the center at 6, she reminded. Stick to the window and send a check-in photo. She paused at the door and looked right at me. Today matters more than any court stamp. We left separately and met again at the school gate. Daniel stood with hands open and waited for our son. I walked beside him, not near, not far. I will explain everything age-appropriate, he offered softly. Skip the romance and stick to facts, I said. The classroom door opened and kids spilled out like marbles. Our son ran toward us with a backpack bouncing. He reached Daniel first and hugged him without asking. Then he looked up at both of us with bright focus. Are we getting pizza after homework? We'll talk first, I answered, keeping my voice gentle. Then pizza happens if listening happens. He shrugged like any 8-year-old who wants cheese. We walked to the car and buckled in silence. I rehearsed 3 lines and chose the shortest. At home, we sat at the table with water. Kiddo, you know how some families live in 2 houses. He nodded and swung his feet and waited. Your dad has another kid in another house, I said. Nothing changes about your place with us. He looked at Daniel for a long, careful second. Is he little like me was? He asked quietly. Daniel swallowed and held steady for once. He is younger, he is family, he is not replacing you. Our boy stared at the water and let it settle. You will meet him when grown-ups get the rules straight. I kept the words short so they would land. No surprises, no sneaking, no secrets. He breathed out and picked up a cracker. Okay, but I still want pizza. After dinner, I logged into the agency's site again. The first payment showed a green status and a timestamp. A second page confirmed the pickup slot for tomorrow. I added an alert to my calendar with 2 backups. Then the doorbell rang and every nerve rose. Daniel checked the monitor and stiffened at the image. His father stood under the camera with a shopping bag. No authorization, no notice, no mercy. I pressed the intercom and kept my voice neutral. You are not on the list, leave immediately. Open the door, his voice cut through the speaker. You are breaking the family with paperwork. I hit record and framed the audio with timestamps. Daniel put a hand on the wall and didn't move. Tell him to go, I said and waited. Dad, leave, he called, shoulders squared and throat tight. I cannot let you in, you are not cleared. Silence traveled through the wires for a full beat. You let strangers run your life now, the old man spat. Close this circus or I will. I pressed call on the coordinator hotline while listening. Unauthorized approach at our address, I reported steadily. Prior incident last night at the center documented. Securing the home and requesting patrol drop by. The operator took details and dispatched a unit. The camera showed him pacing and trying angles. He covered the lens with his palm and yanked. The audio warped and then returned with a thud. He stepped back and shouted a time and a threat. Daniel flinched for the first time all day. The patrol car rolled up 5 minutes later like a verdict. Officers spoke to him, wrote something, and guided him off. We watched from the hallway and didn't breathe until quiet. Temporary protective order, I said, already texting the attorney. Daniel didn't argue because there was nothing left to defend. We returned to the table and reopened the laptop. The judge's docket entry appeared with a courtroom assignment. 9 a.m. tomorrow, signed by the assistant. I sent screenshots to Alina and the coordinator together. Alina answered with a single efficient received. Daniel paced twice and then stopped himself with effort. I will face him after court and tell him no. You will include our lawyer on that call, I replied. He nodded and took the couch without being told. The line between us held like a rope across a river. I barely slept and then somehow morning arrived anyway. In the courthouse annex, the air felt dry and exact. Alina stood beside me with her binder zipped tight. Daniel waited near the door with eyes down and still. The clerk called our case with a number that echoed. The judge read the coordinator's summary and looked over glasses. Emergency consent order granted under current terms, she ruled. Third-party contact prohibited except counsel and agency staff. Financial audit to be completed within 30 days. Her gavel touched wood and lifted without drama. Add an educational note for the school, I asked. No unscheduled pickups by extended relatives. Granted, the judge replied, pen moving swift and sure. Alina exhaled with a tiny drop of shoulders and relief. Daniel's posture settled like weight found a ground. Outside the courtroom, his phone vibrated 3 times. He toggled it to silent and put it in his pocket. Call your father when we get home with counsel, I said. He nodded and stared at the floor tiles like choices. Alina leaned in and pitched her voice low to me. You should see something before you leave, she said. She unlocked her phone and opened a message thread. Daniel's father had sent her a photograph at dawn. A screen capture of our house with a timestamp. The subject line read, I can outlast your rules. I took the device and passed it to the clerk. Add to the protective file, I requested, voice clipped. The clerk copied it and logged the sender information. The paper trail grew teeth in front of us. Alina slid the phone back into her pocket. We left the building and went straight to the attorney. He reviewed the new threats and drafted a supplemental motion. Filed by close of business, he promised, fingers flying. Expect a call from the magistrate this afternoon. I squeezed the armrest once and let air return. The call came sooner than expected with a hard tone. Restraining terms extended. Service to be attempted tonight. Violation would mean custody sanctions and fines. I copied the order to my cloud and printed 3 sets. Control felt like something you build in layers. At 4, I met Alina at the community center early. We signed in and checked the log for changes. The supervisor looked up with a crisp nod of recognition. I saw the new order, she said, pen tapping once. We have additional staff on site tonight. Daniel arrived on time and walked straight to the desk. He showed ID and signed with careful handwriting. The boy's name appeared on the board a minute later. He came out holding a small plastic dinosaur and grinning. He raised it like a trophy and waved to both. 2 hours starts now, the supervisor announced for the record. Daniel glanced at me and then to Alina and nodded. They stepped to the seating area and I stayed near intake. 10 minutes later, a picture arrived through the agency app. A table, a juice box, a dinosaur, timestamp proof. I used the quiet to open the last unopened folder. The digital wallet showed inflows from side contracts monthly. Some went to the boy's expenses through the agency. Others routed to that hidden savings he never mentioned. One transfer labeled Bridge Gift pointed to a third person. I flagged it for the attorney and typed 3 questions. Who is this third party? What did they receive? Why? No stories, just fields that demanded exact answers. I hit send and watched the progress bar crawl. A reply blinked in from the paralegal. Third party is a project partner, the message read. Possibly used as a pass-through to avoid taxes. Employer compliance team wants a meeting tomorrow morning. The reach of this mess kept growing new branches. I felt the old fury and then I let it go. The exchange ended on time with hugs shaped by rules. Daniel returned the boy to Alina and signed the checkout. The center's log emitted a soft chime for completion. We walked to the lobby and split without ceremony. This was what structure looked like when no one cheated. Back home, I opened the front door and paused. The sensor alert showed a breach attempt at noon. A delivery man had tried the knob and left. The camera confirmed a package and a flash of a wrist. No face, just a stamped label and urgency. Daniel brought it inside and set it on the table. Unknown sender, he said, stepping back with both hands up. ISL. Iced it open with keys and lifted a single frame. A printout of the first transfer to Alina, years back. On top, a torn sticky note with 2 words. Be honest, no signature, no explanation, only command. I put the paper in the folder and locked it. Tomorrow you meet your HR and compliance with counsel, I said. You give full access to the wallet inside contracts. He nodded and did not attempt a bargain. Our son came in from the hallway with a worksheet. Can he come to my game this weekend? He asked. Yes, under the plan and with check-ins, I answered. Daniel brightened like a small sun cracking cloud cover. Thank you for letting me, he murmured almost to himself. When bedtime settled, I stood in the kitchen and counted. 1 court order, 1 safety plan, 1 schedule alive. 3 key people abiding, 1 loud outsider blocked. This was survival shaped into a week at a time. I could live inside that box and still breathe. The phone rang with a private number and I answered. A magistrate's clerk confirmed service of the order tonight. Subject accepted paperwork and left without incident. Further violations escalate immediately, she added for clarity. I wrote the file number on the whiteboard like armor. Daniel hovered by the couch with a pillow under his arm. I'm going to start sleeping at my brother's place tomorrow. Not until compliance checks out and access logs stabilize, I said. He grimaced and then nodded like someone under oath. You can move after the audit, not before. He sat and stared at the ceiling with hands steepled. I will tell the truth on the record tomorrow. Even if it costs me my job, he added quietly. You already owe the truth, I replied, no cushion. Jobs come and go, court orders stay. My phone buzzed again with a message from Alina. Thank you for the clean exchange, she wrote. Tomorrow's clinic follow-up at 4:45. I will bring the new shots card for the file. I answered with a brisk confirmed, I will attend. Before sleep, I opened the old notes app one more time. I added 2 new rules with tight sentences and no fluff. Full employer disclosure, no private devices for payments. All relatives briefed through counsel only, no side calls. Save and back up, then back up again. The house quieted and the day finally let go. I thought of the first time I asked Elena a question. How she stared at the photo and showed nothing at all. Because she truly didn't know my kid then. Because the label he used for her was a lie. There was no nanny, there was a hidden family. There was money shaped like secrecy and a bruise. There was also a child who needs a father with rules. And there was me, finally choosing order over denial. I turned off the light and prepared for the next knock.